Good evening. This is Hudson Valley Week in Review, where we look back at the people, places, and issues making news in Ulster County and the region. I'm Greene. We begin tonight with a new bill introduced aiming to limit money in politics. The bill would clamp down on campaign donations from businesses that work within the county. The legislation is expected to go to committees for discussion this fall. Legislature Chairman John Preet is the leading voice behind the bill. He talks more about it.
Why now? Well, in my State of the County address in 2014, I talked about campaign finance reform legislation for the County of Ulster. In the County Executive's January 2014 State of the County address, he talked about it extensively. I said I supported him. And I wanted to move forward and look for contribution, look for people who were of a like mind to give suggestions as to how we could start to combat this horrible epidemic of money in politics. And it took a year to try to put things together, to collaborate with people, to sort of come up with a consensus of what might be a good idea. And then we subsequently have sent it out to a lot of the good governance groups around the state, as well as we're going to be sending it to the Board of Elections in Albany and some of the legislators, and asking them for their thoughts, ideas as to how it would work. So this is not something that came up in the last 5 days. I've got just a partial list here of folks that are in the slammer right now because of this epidemic of what I call the gateway drug in politics. I don't know of anyone who ran for office with the idea that, boy, now I can have a windfall. But things happen, things change, and when something comes up and there's money available, and you know the old saying, money talks and nonsense walks. I think the time is right. It's a piece of legislation that's not going to affect this year's election, but to get it right, it takes time. The state of New York has limitations on what people can donate based on criteria that's in their big catalog. What differs from what we're talking about is I'm not putting the onus on the person, the taxpayer, the citizen, because I kind of agree that if you wanted to give me some money, that it's very difficult for me to put a limit other than what's already the guidelines, whether it be, some large amount or not. So the onus is on me not to accept it then, especially if you go down and read the bill where if you worked for me in here, under my care, custody, and control, so to speak, you wouldn't be allowed to make any contributions. So I think the time is right. My own party a year or so ago, the county committee laundered like $325,000 from outside contributors to a New York State Senate campaign. And the articles in the paper, in the press said, we had exceeded or reached the limits of what we could donate, so we had to slide it through a loophole in the law. Now, since when in Ulster County do we deal with that kind of money? And since when should we even have to? The legislators as a whole don't normally have to raise much money. I well understand that if you want to be a candidate, and we encourage people to get involved in politics, you have to try to get your message out. To try to get your message out and not have to go into your own housekeeping money, your family money, you look for folks of like mind or friends or neighbors or relatives to help you pay the bill. And it doesn't become a hardship. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about people from New York and New Jersey and huge amounts of money wanting to contribute to something in Ulster County. For what? And as I said, you see indictments flying all over the state. Here in Ulster County, we're pretty good. But it's not because it was necessarily bad bookkeeping. It was why. Well, in essence, we're trying to make sure that we can create an atmosphere of trust and integrity in Ulster County government, and we'd like to develop this so it would become a model for maybe other counties in the state, or maybe other counties or states, where if somebody contributes money to me, assuming I'm in a position, and then a year or so, they're suddenly my chief of staff or get a nice lucrative job, that they shouldn't be allowed to do it because there's a cause and effect. And the public has no trust in what's going on. By the same token, the few folks that work in this office, I wouldn't even consider asking them to come to a fundraiser for me. I just think that's wrong to cast a little shadow over and say, wouldn't you really like to come to my fundraiser and contribute to my campaign? I just think it's bordering on obscene, the size of the money, the amount of money, and the potential for mistrust by the public. I don't think it's fair to those folks. Somebody comes here to go to work, and if they're qualified, that's great, whether it be here or some other department here. But there shouldn't be an impediment to it. But by the same token, there's a perception in government that if you go along, you'll go along, and you'll get along, and things will work. And I don't think that the staff, whether it be the commissioners or appointed people, should be put in a position where there's an appearance that they're a disciple, or there's appearance that they're pledging allegiance. And it's nice and simple. Don't ask them. Don't accept it. Even if they offer it to you, don't accept it. Well, in-kind donations are not like, Jay walking around with a lapel pin. I mean, if she offered me her helicopter to fly around in, that would be an in-kind contribution. If she rented a restaurant or establishment for me to have a fundraiser, or for someone to have a fundraiser, that would be an in-kind contribution. So we're not talking about anything insignificant. This does not prohibit anybody from making phone calls, for advocating, hey, I think Tim or Joe or John are a great guy, but it's in-kind contributions are they're part of it, where somebody's not actually spending cash for signs or letters or things like that. They're sort of hidden in, but they're supposed to be reported. And we don't even want them being used, let alone reported. What I'm looking for is all the input we can get. I mean, you'll see folks saying, oh, it's unconstitutional. New York State has limits that they already have in place for the maximums that you can give a candidate for a given office. Sometimes it's 5 cents a citizen, or 5 cents a vote, or a certain amount of money. But what we're talking about is more important than this, because it's putting the onus on the candidate or the elected official. So we're going to take our time. I'm begging people to give me ideas, thoughts, omissions, deletions, corrections, any idea they have. And I even would welcome somebody saying to me, oh, I don't think money's a big deal. I don't think there's there's any correlation between what's happening with people going into the slammer and money. Say it to me. That's okay. But if you think there's a potential problem, or you think there is a problem with too much money in politics, too much money that influences what somebody may or may not want to do, then let's work together and get it done.
When we return, a warning for residents in Ulster County regarding the IRS. We'll explain next.